We're gonna get into something scary now. We're gonna get into something scary. Somebody sent me this. It's like, yo, I'd love to see your thoughts on this if you made a video on this. So we're now getting to our political bag, conversations that do matter. Not just about Huns and all this other shit. You get me? I saw in the first minute the algorithm might not like that, but yeah, man. Let's see how this one goes. I'm gonna give you my thoughts and opinions, man. We are gonna be checking out this video. It's titled not the white. It's not the white genocide. Like no. It's not titled the white genocide. Trust me. Like no, it's thing. The motherfucking apartheid version 2, basically. Yeah. Let's get into it.
We have to get him out rapidly, or again, we're not going to have a country.
Since Trump took office for his second term, we've seen a lot of this.
President Trump's massive.
I'm gonna, without any fear of contradiction, I'm gonna say this now. When it comes to deportation, any country only deport the illegal aliens. Everybody that is here legally, even if you're just living here but it's legal, you can stay. But if you're jumping fences and you're not in a war-torn country, go back. But if you're in a war-torn country and you need refuge and you jump the fence, we have to understand in a way and we'll find a solution for you.
Immigration crackdown.
ICE agents are arresting nearly 800 people every day.
This nation is under distress.
Clashes over President Trump's ICE raids.
Rallies across the country opposing President Trump's agenda on the day of the president's military parade.
But amid the
It's if you're a Mexican and they're sending you back over the border, rallying around with Mexican flags may not be the best moves. It's like you've lit a big fire and a big signal like, hey, this is where we are now. I don't think that's the best move, bro. You might as well just make their jobs harder by scattering all over the place, bro. So that you just stretch their resources so wide that it's not even feasible.
arrests and deportations, there's this one weird story.
Nearly 60 white South Africans were admitted into the United States. It's part of President Donald Trump's resettlement program for white Afrikaners.
I made a video about this earlier during the year, bro. And I said a lot of these ones that moved here, they look broke. I'm not gonna lie.
Farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether
They're not.
they're white or black makes no difference to me. It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about.
Donald Trump's administration is aiming to bring the first group of white...
That's been all debunked. That's not happening. It's fake. So, yeah. There have been some casualties. Nah? Nobody denies that. But it's not a targeted racial thing.
South Africans to the United States via its refugee program as soon as next week.
Like, bro, look at this guy. This guy does not own a farm. This guy does not own a farm. He might own a farm. He could possibly own a farm. He does not own a farm. He does not own a farm. Neither does he.
What are we doing? Earlier this year, Trump brought in 59 white South Africans on Priority 1 refugee status, just a few months after basically blocking new refugees from coming into the US entirely. It's almost certainly got to do with Elon, who might, maybe, perhaps, also...
Man, Elon, that was like... Man, I couldn't defend that move. I remember people were sending me clips like, bro, look at your boy, bro. I was like, bruh.
be the rogue ex-employee who made 3 a.m. changes to Grok AI so it'd be obsessed with white genocide. We don't know for sure, I guess. But if we're not 100% about that little detail, we do know what the bigger picture is here. Trump, Elon, and the Afrikaners they're bringing in are taking advantage of a huge flaw with how liberalism handles justice. A flaw that lets white supremacists call themselves victims and somehow gets people to listen. A flaw that also, conveniently, also makes it either too late or too soon for things like reparations. We're talking about historical justice today. Howdy friends, JT from the future here.
A quick, again, early thing I want to say about historical justice is, as much as there's a place for it as well, I think we've also become a little bit complacent in just expecting handouts and just waiting for things to kind of happen. And obviously, due to lack of poor leadership, representation, and corruption, things like that, I really think it's more of an excuse now, though. Like, oh, like our grandparents were done dirty, what, which is all valid stuff, right? But now they use something valid to be lazy and to be corrupt into from the average person, and the average person uses these things that are relevant as excuses to not do something about their situation. At least that's what I think. I decided to pick up a damn camera. You feel me? Like,
wanted to take a quick second to do a shameless plug for Means TV, both because it's awesome and because
no. Listen, bro. Shout out to you. Like, your video quality is amazing. I'm not gonna. Yeah.
days. Every person who signs up using a creator's link, it's a smokescreen giving the Trump administration license to do what it values most, making it seem like only white people can integrate here so that discrimination and violence against everybody else seems justified. Callie Holloway in The Nation put it perfectly. This is an administration putting white grievance above black suffering. Because, let's be clear, white South Africans are not a persecuted group. For being only 7% of the population, whites occupy more than 62% of corporate leadership positions. 2 in every 3 black South Africans are impoverished, while just 1% of white South Africans are. Whites still own 75% of the land, and Trump and Elon's claims that white farmers are being uniquely targeted and killed or having their land taken from them.
The thing I don't like about Elon with this entire situation is he doesn't know what's happening. He's literally, yes, he owns X, but bro, X is just an accumulation of people's opinions. The entire global scope of what is happening here in this country was shot out of proportion. And my theory since back then is someone came here and started planting seeds of destruction because there was something that these guys want in South Africa. Obviously, it's resources, right? And they want to oust the government. Now, they want to oust them in order to put in their own people and their own, their own little puppets. And Elon is the driving force of that. So, wars are fought on information, at least nowadays. And what you do is you paint someone out to be the bad guy so that you can paint yourself to be the hero. That way, we're going to make it seem like South Africans need saving so that, the troops from America or something can come in and save South Africa and then replace the old corrupt regime with their new, better regime. You get what I'm going with here? So that's exactly how it happens. First of all, it's a war information. They make you look bad. They get rid of you. By making themselves look good, they get rid of you, and then now they put their own person, and things are worse than they've ever been.
It's just untrue. White genocide is simply, obviously, not real. It's not true here, it's not true there. There is no apartheid version 2. South Africa is still a country where white people just have it better. So why is that apartheid v2 rhetoric being used here? Why would anybody think those still benefiting from racial privilege are victims? I think that to understand this, we should talk about the real apartheid.
As the late Prime Minister, Dr. Hendrik Verwoerd, put it, we want to keep South Africa white. Keeping it white can mean only one thing, namely, white domination. Not leadership, not guidance, but control.
Hey man, it's gonna sound fucked up, but my country looked so beautiful back in the day, bro.
You probably know most of this already, but apartheid was the system of white minority rule in South Africa that lasted from 1948 to 1994, though segregation and white supremacy were around for a lot longer. Under apartheid, that segregation was further codified, enforced, and made more extreme. Black South Africans were physically kept apart from whites, segregated into what were...
And that's what townships are. Fun fact, that's what townships are. In Tanzania, Soweto, and all these other townships, those are basically worker camps, but yeah.
Called Bantustans, dependent states that excluded black people from South African citizenship. Non-whites were forced out of their homes, their land, and politics entirely. The choice for most was either living in these neglected reservations or staying in the white areas, most often illegally and facing severe discrimination. Interracial sex and marriage were forbidden. Non-white South Africans were forced to work for white South Africans for low pay. And everyone who publicly opposed this system was either killed, as 21,000 people were, or disappeared and detained without trial, as over 80,000 people were. There's a lot more awful stuff to apartheid than we can get to right now. But it's important that you have some idea of what happened to know that to get past all this and to get to justice, South Africa did something called truth and reconciliation. When you go from a deeply discriminatory society full of brutal supremacist violence, you do have to ask yourself, how can we ever move forward?
When it comes to these bills and everything, and our human rights bill and our freedom charter and all these other things, in principle and in practice, yeah, at the time they were very applicable and they were very good. Well, in principle, not in practice, sorry. Whoa, because we have not been practicing it the way we should have been practicing it. But I hear a lot of chat about updating the Freedom Charter and things like that, which I'm very open to the idea of it. I don't necessarily think it's about giving people more rights. People don't need more rights. They need better implementation of those rights, better, exercising of those rights. And some of the rights need to be adjusted because it can be a bit ambiguous sometimes. It's like, it's like, but what does that really mean?
For liberals, the answer was the TRC.
Welcome to the first special report on the Truth Commission. The Commission's first hearings were held here in the East London Town Hall. And it's been a week of...
East London was so beautiful back then, bro. Even at night. Bro, East London's a piece of shit right now, bro. Bro, I'm closer, man. And 2022, I lived in East London for a year straight. I would frequent the CBD and I would frequent, the area around areas. I was living in a very good upper middle class, predominantly white area, right? But I would frequent the CBD. Let me tell y'all one thing, bro. When I was living there for that year, right? I was living with my dad for a year, right? It was decrepit and destroyed. It was so trash, bro. Oh, it smelled like piss and vomit. It was so beautiful back in the day. That's the only thing that's like, damn, right? We just destroyed this thing.
Raw emotion.
To move beyond apartheid, the goal of the TRC was to establish a culture of human rights.
Yo, I don't lie, bro. You hit me like that with that stick, I'm turning around, bro, and I'm choking you, bro. Yo.
In South Africa. Like in Chile and Argentina before, liberals believed that to get past the evil those societies went through, there needed to be a clear cultural acknowledgement that evil would be firmly left behind. And getting to a consensus that the past was evil begins by agreeing that the evil is past. They did that through public investigations and trials, meant to reveal the extent of violence under apartheid and prosecute some of its most prominent figures. Importantly, the goal was to prosecute as few people as absolutely necessary. Only the amount that would make the past system universally immoral and give space for victims to lay their grievances bare, while showing that the new society was different. These trials would not be a purge or a thorough investigation of guilt. They were there to create a culture of human rights and the rule of law. If some people escaped judgment, that was fine, as long as they now accepted that the rules had changed. In that way, the TRC built a vision of justice that was almost entirely forward-looking, a vision of justice in which everyone, except only the most...
If I was to put myself in a position at the time, and people kind of get away with it without serving massive jail time, without, getting, sent back to the lobby, right? I would be really pissed off. I'd be like, bro, you know what these people did to us and they still just walking around amongst us? Nah, man. I want justice, bro, and I want that real justice. That's how I'd feel, though, if I'm being real.
Vile racists could agree that apartheid was evil, but importantly, a vision of justice that did not ask the white beneficiaries of apartheid to give up anything material. They were just asked to have a little compassion. The TRC asks of white South Africans, and everyone else today, to imagine themselves as little more than well-intentioned witnesses to evil. People who, hypothetically, would have done something if they could have, regardless of if they actually did. By simply acknowledging evil, it's basically as if they had. In this way, the TRC did two important things for liberal justice. It relieved white anxiety, and it reduced the victims of apartheid suffering in the present to basically just trauma. Not a continued suffering under compounding inequality, just trauma that is...
In present day, 30 years later, or 30-something years later from this, 31 years later, right? Yeah? Yes, 31 years later from this, right? Of freedom. I can tell you that a lot of black people, when I speak to them, I'm black, obviously, right? They still have this weird perception of white people. So to me, I'm not really bothered. I've had white friends, spoken to a lot of them. I'm not really bothered because maybe I'm used to them. My exposure could have just put me in that mental headspace. But in terms of white anxiety, I would think it's still around. Like people have a weird perception of other racial groups like white groups.
Effectively healed when all these compassionate would-be justice warriors feel bad, without them ever needing to agree to restitution. Meanwhile, post-apartheid South African society could continue to have the same hierarchy as before. This is the important bit about the way that justice in South Africa took place. Thanks to events like the TRC, those who benefited from apartheid could think of themselves as completely distinct from the process of its perpetration. And on the other side, they could think of the victims of apartheid as either completely innocent and unthreatening, those who would agree to the blank slate reset, or dangerous, those who would ask for more than just thoughts and prayers. And that second camp could be permanently imagined as a lingering threat. They could be demonized. They don't fit into the neat model of the TRC. They don't fit into the new culture of human rights and legal order. They were asking for too much. They were a threat. And in that way, white beneficiaries could imagine themselves as future victims. They could equate the suffering of innocent victims of apartheid, those they no longer feared, with their own imagined future suffering at the hands of those who didn't accept that the TRC had definitively settled the question of what to do about injustice.
I think a lot of the fears that came from people was financial based. I think a lot of the fears was people like, oh, I can't get ultra cheap labor as accessibly anymore. My business might go under. And sometimes some people's racial remarks and racial points of views were so embedded within them from that disgusting system that they just, it's like, bro, they just physically just, were repulsed by the thought of integration when it comes to other racial groups within the predominantly white controlled economy at the time.
After all, why should there be a revolution if all these beneficiaries agreed that what happened was bad and that the perpetrators, those who actually did apartheid, had already been dealt with? Justice was served, even if things didn't look all that different. Knowing that they'd never have to lose anything, they could calmly call out the past and permanently block any restitution by weaponizing white fears. The narrative you're left with is that redistribution in 1994 would have just been too soon. It could have jeopardized the peace process. And today, of course, it's too late. Why would we make people who had nothing to do with apartheid pay? It's not a very different argument.
Yeah. Damn, right now, people don't want to give up their land. They're like, yeah, I never did anything. That's my great-grandfather. And people are like, yeah, but your great-grandfather took this from me, and now I ain't got nothing, But you have what was mine.
From what we hear in the US. Bringing up slavery is dredging up the past. It's too late for reparations. Segregation's been over for generations. All that does is divide us. How do we know whose ancestors were slaves and whose ancestors were slaveholders? Have you heard about the Irish? They were slaves too, don't you know?
Now, to be clear, if it's necessary, slavery is evil. But let's be honest, up until 150 years ago, when a group of brave Americans fought and died to finally put an end to it, slavery was the rule rather than the exception around the world, and had been for thousands of years, sadly.
This rhetoric is everywhere when we talk about historical injustice. The evil is in the past. It bears on the present, sure, but because we're not responsible ourselves, the best we can do is try to have fair rules from now on. This way of thinking about justice is flawed, but we should start by acknowledging that it's coming from an accurate insight. The history of every society is one of horrible injustice. Violence, exploitation, discrimination, and suffering are staples of the historical canon, and there isn't one.
Yeah, man, I mean, that's most of humankind in a nutshell, really. It's like, violence, injustice, that type of thing, man. Slavery, usury, that type of stuff. It's all over. It's almost part of our DNA, I'm not gonna lie. But I think that when it comes to just righting the wrongs of the past, I think the better thing to do is like, I don't know, man. Stripping people of certain lands is very difficult, because they're gonna fight that. They're like, why the hell am I giving up my lands? I don't want to do that. If you want me to give up this land, pay me money. I don't think you strip them entirely of that land. But if somebody has 3 hectares, take away 2, maybe 2.5 hectares, and now if it distributed accordingly, if you really want to do something special. Now obviously if it's farmland or something, we need the crop and we need all this other stuff now. And if somebody wants to recapture farmland, they better be able to use it as efficiently as the last guy, I think, Because now, hey, it's all well and good to give people land back, and then now imagine you give them back the land and we don't have food anymore. That's a very big problem.
Single objective point where things were fair that we can try to rewind to. Every point in history is following and followed by injustice. It's also true that no one in the present has agency over the evils that their ancestors either enacted or suffered from. But just because those things are true doesn't mean we should limit justice to this idea that the worst thing about the past is that it causes trauma in the present, and that white guilt, the rule of law, and human rights are the best we can offer. Just because we can't have an arbitrary baseline to which we can return doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for more than thoughts and prayers. The answer to historical injustice isn't pretending that we're all on level footing already. The answer is material equality. If most inequality today is a result of history, and most of history was bad, equality is a solution for all the injustices we inherit. This is particularly necessary because of how capitalism works. The capitalist model of finance and growth rewards those who start out with more.
He's one of those. Okay, I'm just gonna say this. The more you have is the more you'll have. You know, if I have 141 subscribers at this time, it's gonna be a lot harder for me to get to 200. But if I have 141,000 subscribers, it's a lot easier for a guy at 141,000 subscribers to get to 200,000 subscribers than it is for a guy with 141 subscribers to get to 200 subscribers. You understand? So 141k, easier to get to 200k. 141, is harder to get to 200. So I see that thing where it's like, oh, that guy has a head start. Boom, 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 boom. Again, if you peel back the layers now, you could have found out that his family 3 generations ago has been really working hard, and he is the accumulation of previous generations that worked extremely, extremely, extremely hard. So we can't discredit this person because his family was busting their ass each and every single day to make him a reality. Now, obviously not everybody is like that. Some people stole, they stole a living. It's like that. But again, I think equal opportunity is not the same thing as equal outcome. I understand giving people equal opportunity, but I think it's not possible to guarantee people an equal outcome unless you're unless you're punishing people who achieve just to reward people who have failed. And that's a broken system. I'd rather be in a meritocracy than some sort of, yippee-ki-yay, everybody holds hands, you win, everyone's a winner. No, we need people, like, for victors to exist, the vanquished also have to exist. Unfortunately, it's the name of the game. If I want to own a Lamborghini, I'm gonna need a guy to also still work at McDonald's. As wild as it may sound, we can't all own Lamborghinis, nor should we all own Lamborghinis. Otherwise, what's the point of owning a Lamborghini? You know what I mean? Like, and maybe that's a capitalistic mindset, whatever. But I just don't believe that you can make everyone equal. We're not even born equal. We're not the same height. We're not even as like someone might just be born stronger than you, thicker bones, taller, shorter, like less dense bones. Someone longer arms, shorter limbs. Like someone could be the same height as you but have longer limbs than you. Like we're not born equal. Some people have blue eyes, some people have brown eyes, bro. Like not everyone is. We're not born the same. Everybody's own nuances. So trying to just make it seem like you can just level the playing field in its totality, I think that's just very idealistic, and I don't think it's very realistic, and I don't think it's something worth striving towards, because again, I don't think a meritocracy can exist when you just keep taking from people who do well to feed people who keep failing,
regardless of why they do. That anyone inherits privilege and wealth under capitalism means that we're constantly on track to bigger and bigger gaps between the rich and the poor based on the worst atrocities people before us have committed. Evil is not past. It's constantly accumulating and growing. It's the very nature of the present, and many liberals might agree. Of course, inequality is unjust, but you know what they think is worse? That revolutionaries may try to do anything about it beyond pretending good intentions will fix everything. Instead of only dealing with justice at the level of trauma, revolutionary justice implicates beneficiaries directly in the process of restitution. It doesn't say beneficiaries and perpetrators are the same, but it does demand that those who just got lucky should not be allowed to continue to make gains and widen the gap on the back of that historical injustice without material concessions. If you don't deserve to have things taken away from you because you personally didn't do anything wrong, you don't deserve to use it for personal gain either. Meaning, if things just worked out for you, your family set you up, you were born into high status, fine, it's not your fault, that's great. The very minimum of justice, though, is that there are conditions on what happens now. Your wealth cannot grow at the expense of others. You can absolutely still make money, but only if we close that gap in the process. You invest some of your money well, you'll be taxed and used for universal programs. You have a ton of land, you're not getting more than you can use. You're on Wall Street and you gambled too hard, we'll prevent the crash if and only if it'll mean everyone is better off afterward.
Yeah, you see, again, I feel like this is where I'm gonna go on a whole tangent on being disagreeable with this. I don't believe in punishing people for achieving big things. I don't, because what if I'm first generation rich, right? What if I become the first breakout multi-millionaire in my family? first breakout billionaire in my family because I've built some revolutionary technology. I did that. I built that. So because I did that, now my children 100 years, my great grandchildren from 100 years from now, you telling me that you want to take away my achievements because they didn't do it? It's a revolutionary idea. Those happen once in a generation. There's over 7 billion of us here. That means only like a select group of people will be involved in that. It doesn't make sense to take away my hard work from my children. I did it for them, you know. I did it for them. Now, in terms of injustice, in terms of giving them these things in an unjust way, like wars and things like that, I understand taking it back and redistributing it. But if I did it fairly, and I made my own money my own way, and I built SpaceX, and I built Tesla, and I bought X, and I bought this, and I bought that, how could you take that away from me just because my kids didn't do it? How could you take it away from my kids just because they didn't do it, is what I mean, right? I don't believe in that. I think the best solution is to give everybody an opportunity, and the only way to give everybody an opportunity is for the governments to be able to help people as much as they can instead of just squeeze us for each and every single cent that we have. Governments are not efficient in what they do. Governments fail people each and every single day. At least this government does. The amount of money that we make in this country is enough for the government to be able to support over 90 something percent of this country. We shouldn't have the problems that we have when it comes to service delivery, when it comes to jobs and the difficulty of getting jobs. We shouldn't have problems like that. There's genuinely people in the government that have a car allowance and it'll be like 10,000 rand. That's a BMW. Why are government employees given money to buy a BMW? It's not even from their own personal salary. They're just given money, you know? And again, that's what I've been told by people who work in government spaces and are close enough to those high ranks. And when I heard about that, I was like, yeah, that's fucking crazy, you know? So instead of pissing around and the government just taking out tax money, it's either the government flatten taxes, so that everybody just does their own things, or the tax money that they have right now, you use it usefully and you actually improve the country. No one complains about paying tax if you can see your tax money working for you. If the police force is better, the justice system is better, service delivery is better, there's jobs galore. No one is gonna, and the city is safe. Every city is safe. Every city is clean. New buildings, new this, new that, and it's all affordable. And food is cheap, electricity is cheap, water is cheap. No one will complain about taxes. People will pay 50, 60, 70% tax if everything is perfect. I promise you that if the government does everything amazing, no one will complain about 50% tax. I promise you that. You can't complain about it because the work is right there. Imagine if every road that you drove on was perfect. You can't complain. It's doing its job. If everyone had clean water, you can't complain about the tax. Everyone has clean water, houses, everything. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And that's why I don't believe in taxing people as much, because the government is squandering people's money. So it's like, bro, you're squandering my money. Why do I keep giving it to you? How's about you give me my money and then I go out there and I start reinvesting the economy myself? How about I go there and I put money down for initiatives like building schools for people, building water reservoirs and things like boreholes and shit like that, right? How about I go over there and after I get into a project with other people that have money, and after we just build like some sort of solar park somewhere there. Might cost a couple million rand, but it's more than a couple of people involved in this thing. And then now we have enough to power a couple houses or a community or two or this or that. Let me have agency over my own money, because you're clearly not doing it right. But that's just how I see it personally. I'd rather have equal opportunity instead of just, I give my shit to somebody that didn't work as hard as me. I built this shit. Just like right now, if somebody, if like, dog, the day this channel gets to like 100,000 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers, 50,000, 100,000, I'll be pissed if someone said, hey, Mr. Jules, how about you just, you give me 50% of all the money you earn on YouTube? And I look at him, I'm like, wait, why? Oh, just. I'm like, what do you do for a living? Nothing. I'm not even on social media. You want my money and you don't even do any of this. You didn't build any of this shit, but you want my money. You want my community. You want everything that I built. just because I built it and it's prosperous. But because it's prosperous, you must prosper because like off of my back. You didn't do what I did. That's just how I look at it though.